bite my woolen crocheted ass. And welcome back to the next edition of the Rancor Pit. No, this is not about my little crocheted bender. No, matter of fact, I didn't have the resources in order to do a proper opening because I don't own a Hunter the Reckoning book from the Old World of Darkness. But that's okay. We're going to talk about one of my most famous and most widely used on the chat hunters that I used way back in the day, some 15 odd years ago. His name was Tom Breaker. I took name inspiration from a movie. I took attitude inspiration from my own head. Now, here's the funny thing. I've always said that some of my inspirations always end up being modified and made into something famous. I know this sounds really cynical, but ask anybody who's been gaming with me for over a decade. They'll actually say it seems like it's true. Every time I come up with a really good idea or interesting concept or original piece of a fandom, it somehow gets spread around, used, morphed, put into a movie, written into a book, or whatever. Well, I originally had made Tom way back in the day, and his creed was Avenger. He, however, had some self-destructive tendencies, so I almost played him like he was a dual creed, like maybe he was an Avenger, like Wayward. But I mean, I didn't want to use the Wayward because they're kind of nuts. So, yeah, I played him like an Avenger. However, his attitude and his personality and his traits and his quirks were all original, but about 2 years roughly after I made him, Blade Trinity came out, and we didn't go to the theaters to see it. We actually watched it at home with a couple of friends, and as soon as Ryan Reynolds' character Hannibal King came onto the screen and spoke any sort of real line of dialogue, we all basically looked at each other, and I just about shit myself because it was exactly how I had played him. Kind of wild, a bit crazy, kind of self-destructive, and just a really, really intense smartass. Tom I made using basically a made-up order of hunters that I called the Brotherhood of the Dying Light, and it was specifically for Judaism, but priest of a different sect of Catholicism, and these priests specifically were able to see, in terms of World of Darkness, that vampires had to have come from somewhere, werewolves had to have come from somewhere. All these other shifters, these mages, these reality benders had to come from somewhere. They're not just simply spawns of the Underdark or creations of some sort of a fallen angel or deified, devil or demon or whatever. So they were incredibly hardcore for punishing the deviants of those groups. But the other ones that either were not given a choice or were able to retain their humanity, as it were, and either not go so severely like kindred, or vampire as the term is, not go so severely off to the side kindred like a Sabbat or an Anarch, or not go so way off the deep end like a Black Spiral Dancer, or even just Non-Gaian Guru, that there was actually worth in working with these. They were people, they weren't humans, but they were beings of existence. So they didn't immediately kill all of them that they ever met. The problem is they were really good at finding the ones that needed to be killed. One of Tom's most favorite things is, was, because I don't play Tom no more. He was on the on mods, and then I specifically switched him to private storylines, and then I don't play him no more. The thing about Tom is one of his favorite things to do was, he was pure. He was of the Catholic Church. He was pure, and he would specifically go out, buy a bottle of very cheap and highly stinking booze, take a sip, and really act up playing a drunkard. And he always carried with him a set of brass knuckles, and it helped fighting, beings that could take a lot of punishment. Being an Avenger, you can basically channel your inner hunter power, basically, or the edge that was zeal, transform it into a power called cleave, and he was able to light those things up and actually do aggravated damage with them, which was, you have technically four, but it's usually like only three types of damage in White Wolf. There's bashing, lethal, and aggravated. Vampires like have cut in half bashing before they go to soak, which sucks. That includes bullets. Lethal hurts, but you can heal it, and you can soak it. Aggravated, however, you have to heal mystically, either by spending blood points or waiting or getting healing somehow. You're able to basically light up a set of knuckle dusters, and he was actually a part of his backstory. His backstory is he was an amateur boxer for the Catholic Church back in the day in his parish. So he actually was really good at fisticuffs. He would go down alleys really pretending to be drunk and of pure blood, and basically the deviant vampires, as it were, would find him, and he would destroy them without second thought. Another one of his tricks was, and this was a custom design of mine, and then I saw it in a movie later on. They had my brain tapped, maybe that's why. What he does is anytime he has to switch parishes or areas where he goes works under a particular cardinal, he first thing he always asks for is a troy ounce of silver, because he would literally hand pound tiny little crucifixes, right? Because he had the true faith merit. He'd hand pound tiny little crucifixes, and then he would use glass bullets, or not glass, Pyrex bullets, I should say, and score them to make sure they would actually break on impact. And he would fill those with his own blessed holy water, and then put the silver in the holy water. And that was, for vampires that had a silver allergy, which are rare in the world of darkness, but they do exist, or for changers, stereotypical changers that have an aversion to silver. Holy water for the vampires, silver for any changers, and he always carried a high caliber semi-automatic pistol with him, so he was always protected one way or the other. One of the biggest storylines that I actually put Tom in was one with a vampire, oddly enough. It was in Necropolis, the default like megacity that is like dark New York, essentially. And he met the Prince of the City, which at the time, but Prince is an operative term if you don't know Vampire the Masquerade. Prince is literally just a leading vampire of the Camarilla who resides in the city, who controls the rest of them in a sort of dark democratic way, I suppose it is. They're not elected; they're simply, they're either taken by force or put into power, one of the two. He met with the prince, who was a woman. She was a Toreador Camarilla who was originally a Sabbat Toreador, which, if you don't know those terms, Camarilla is a side of the vampire spectrum that is manageable. A lot of them still do cling to their humanity, so mass murder, ripping people's heads off, and stuffing a next door neighbor's poodle into the mailbox really isn't a stereotypical sign of a Camarilla vampire. But because they are all a little more woven together, connected than the end of the group, usually you screw with one, you screw with them all, and then the prince calls blood hunts on people for a reason. On the other side of the spectrum is the Sabbat. These are the incredibly sadistic and masochistic, for that reason, bloodlustful, hyper-violent vampires who can be, totally reckless and go into a city and cause a bunch of chaos, or who can subtly get into an area and totally corrupt it and take everything over. It all depends on what clan you're talking about. She was a Camarilla Toreador, which was more closer to the stereotypical vampire that's been in a lot of lores, more specifically like Anne Rice. They love the arts. They love the human spirit. They are a big fan of having humans around as either food sources or pets or ghouls or whatever. They're the ones that you can typically deal with without any real problems. Between them and the Ventrue, the Blue Bloods, they make up like the bulk, mostly the bulk of Camarilla vampires. She was a Camarilla Toreador. It was a long, drawn out discussion because he came in a hostile sort of a sense because he had just been switched back to his old parish after having doing business elsewhere. And he came under some really hostile pretenses, but they had a number of really interesting encounters. And then he basically said, okay, you have a choice. Either you get out of the way completely, giving me and my group, my Brotherhood the Dying Light, carte blanche, without any fear of your people attacking us, so we can go cleanse the city. Princes don't like to give up their power. And he says, or you have another choice. You can unofficially hire us, keep it in secret if you want, but you have to unofficially hire us specifically for the task of rooting out your garbage. That the difference between the two is you're accepting us being here, which means if anything from your people happens to my group, I'm coming to knock on your door first. Well, she chose that one. Better to have them controllable than running wild and doing what hunters do. Tom grew from that to have a really interesting relationship with the prince. Not anything like that, but definitely a working one and even a respected one because she was really battling with her own past, which was dark because she used to be Sabat, and she used to be basically a plaything to a very powerful vampire. It really grew into an interesting relationship. I don't want to label it as like brother or sister or anything like that because it wasn't, but it grew into a very interesting relationship between the two, and it was a little bit of love hate. But Tom, you couldn't hate Tom. He kept his faith. He did his job regardless of circumstances. He kept his people safe, and he took care of the business that she was obviously faltering and taking care of. So they did make some sort of a pact to allow them to be in the city and work freely as a cell. Later on in the storylines, which was like a couple of years later in real time, I had the prince's old master, mentor, her patron, basically come back into the foray, as it were, having the Justicar, the ruler of a particular clan of a particular region, come back into play into the storyline, which really started to screw things up. He had become corrupted by something, and he was working really really underhandedly. He ended up having all of Tom's cell killed in front of him, which really. See, the thing with hunters is they're still human. See, mages can get away with a lot of different things because they bend reality to their will, which also includes dealing with damage that the real world causes you, be it getting beatings or shot or catching on fire or anything like that. Werewolf regenerate almost immediately, almost every types of damage. Vampires can spend blood to heal just like this, and like I said, they take half of bashing before they soak. So, for four dice lethal on a regular, simple little Glock 9mm, well, 4 dice, let's say you get all 4 successes. Okay, that's 4 successes. Chop that in two, and that's what the vampire has to soak. Most vampires do have stamina too. So it's, hunters break, they bleed, they're human. And only one of the creeds really has access to the right kind of edges that allow them to heal without taking extraordinary merits. Tom kind of snapped. He went a bit rogue for a while, and later in that storyline, as the prince was wrestling around with power control of the city, I had certain people come in and basically take over and take her away from the situation and keep him and one of her other people hostage. And he totally played it up like they beat him. They knew what he was. He was, even if they didn't know he was a hunter, he was just a mortal, right? They basically beat him to a bloody pulp. And then they did a video showing her of who they had under their control. And he's bleeding from the mouth, black eye swollen over. He's just like hamburger. And he just looks right in the camera and says, they're giving us good food and clean water. And then they beat him up more for that smart-ass remark. So Tom was a lot of fun whenever I did get a chance to play him over those years. Was like I said, which was some time ago. The thing about Hunter is Hunter's rules are really different in the World of Darkness. When the when White Wolf put out was the Hunter the Reckoning game, the mechanics were really different. Like vampires have disciplines, the mechanics are very straightforward. Werewolves had gifts. They're almost mirrored in their mechanics. But Hunter's mechanics are different because their powers can fluctuate with how dedicated they are to their beliefs. Not even like religious beliefs, but the beliefs in themselves. And they have a mechanic called conviction, which they can gain and lose, and you have to risk so much of it to make something work. And if you risk so much and then it doesn't work, you lose it. So you lose like your inner fire for being a hunter. You lose your nerve. Backbone goes soft. So it's I actually found it hard even as a storyteller in ST to even run a real hunter game. That's why I only really played one as an NPC. But I would like to get a hold of the Hunter book, simply because one, I don't have it. Two, I would actually like to take the time and effort to learn the mechanics, like on a real permanent basis, so I could use them when we go back to White Wolf. We haven't done White Wolf in a long time. We've got our D&D campaign, the Heroes and Villains campaign, and it's going long, but it's going strong too. That's why I don't want to do anything to rock the boat. I had a sideline story or a story for Star Wars that I was doing for two people, but that got kind of keeled over. It's there waiting to go back to. It's just there's been no want or need. So yeah, I haven't we haven't done White Wolf in a long time. I've been thinking about it off and on. Thinking, hey, I mean, it'd be kind of cool. Get together some Guru, or get the right kind of people and do like a Pharaoh, like a beta game, like Goral or Mowgli or Rokea or something. But I can't get enough people interested in it here. But hey, it happens. But yeah, Tom Breaker was a lot of fun. He caused a lot of shit. His storyline spanned from Necropolis way up in New York, all the way down to Mexico, where in between, him being shuffled around to different parishes, he did always like default and go back to Mexico for a little while because, well, that's one big, huge seat of undead for one. He was more of a vampire hunter than a things that go bump on the night hunter. Simply because he had true faith, he blessed his own holy water. He did keep, a patron saint medallion around his neck for a holy symbol. He did follow in that particular like formula, I guess. Yeah, he went back to Mexico for a while, did some things there, helped reestablish a parish that was basically destroyed by a Sabbat vampire and a corrupted cardinal that was doing deals with the wrong people. And then he came back to the same prince who had the city, and he had no cell, he had no real resources. He was basically busted, and he came back and basically became a private security, not just to her, but to basically her regime. And he didn't pick up another cell at all. He couldn't go through that again because he lost like 8 people in one night, and it all happened at the same time. So he never would do that again. His faith was shaken a bit, but he found more resolve the longer he was there, and so yeah, he was my one big hunter character. I had other ones that really didn't work out, but Tom, I used in open rooms occasionally because I knew enough of the mechanics to make it work, but he never really got into huge like outside campaigns. It was always the private ones that I ran. So yeah, Tom, he was a lot of fun. I keep saying that, but he really was, because it was basically my dark humor side coming out in the character, and I hadn't done that to that point. Not even Lump, my Black Fury, my Metis Black Fury. He had some dark humor to him too, but Tom was mortal. He couldn't fall back on anything, which means anything he said, he had to be ready to lose a few teeth. So, yeah, Tom Breaker, and I would like to get the book, even just to restat him so I have his sheet, because I never did his sheet. Oh, that's not true. I did do his sheet, and he was on the Unmods, because whenever you did a sheet for the Unmods, they did have basically a catalog of their servers where you could do their sheet, and then save it, and you'd always be able to go back to it. You'd be able to search for it real quick, or do a screenshot or whatever. But that mechanic since long gone. I don't even know if the unmods even really exist. I haven't really gone back to it. But it's white-wolf.com. I just don't know what the hell's there, because I mean the whole company's been revamped after the new World of Darkness failed so miserably, and boy did it ever fail. I mean, I played in the international campaigns for Vampire the Requiem, Mage the Ascension. I played on them both, and we went to the international con in Tampa a few years ago, and it was okay. It was a different experience, but it was not what I remembered, and it just the new WoD just did not work. They changed too much. They tried to modify it, and it just didn't work. So yeah, we played Old WoD, Old World of Darkness anyway. We don't do any of the new stuff. So, all right. So let's go ahead and cut this video here. I know it was a long time between the two, and well, things happen. The next one I think I'm going to do, I said that I'm going to talk about, I had recently went back to Star Wars just to make some like notes and NPCs. I used my recently purchased book, the last one I needed for the collection, the Starships of the Galaxy book. I made a ship, I made a captain, made another ship, for different purposes. I actually went down and did all the math to do it, by hand. Hand did some sheets. So I think I'll talk about that next, because those are my recent creations. Other than that, we're just doing the big campaign once every 2 weeks if we can. It won't be 2 weeks this time. It'll be at the end of April. But we'll go back to it. And I would really like to have a method of actually getting like a session somehow recorded or broadcasted, or even live broadcasted. But since I'm the king of one takes using my phone, that would be a little difficult. Not impossible, but a little difficult. I suppose I can maybe borrow our vlogging camera, which you haven't used much. Stick the big memory card in, a big 32 gig memory card, and maybe just like set it somewhere to record. It's some madcap madness, especially what happened with the last session, but I won't go into that. So yeah, if you liked the video, please subscribe, or like it if you liked it. Ha! Like the video if you did enjoy it. Subscribe if you are first time here. Send it out to the rest of the net. And check out my Twitter page. Check me out, Sumo Sushi. And yeah, we'll do some Star Wars custom jobs next time. I'm really good at custom jobs. So, till next episode, grab your dice and roll initiative.